Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the corporate. And we are very lucky that our guest for today is actually part of the July-August issue of the corporate magazine, which you can read actually at Press Reader. So we will be discussing about his story on why he came up with his own school. So without further ado, our guest for today is the CEO of the Eastbridge School, Pastor Gerry Limoso. Hi, Pastor Gerry. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone.
Pastor Gerry, we've seen your answers on how your company survived or surviving the pandemic. Ang tanong ko po sa inyo kanina, Pastor, did you ever enter in a corporate world setting or you went directly to your business?
Actually, nag-ano rin na talaga ako, nagiging employee. I started as a teacher actually, a teacher for almost 2 years. But I discovered that I wasn't cut to be a teacher. So I shifted to IT and I stayed there for almost 20 years.
Wow. Pastor Gerry, teacher and then later on to IT. Pero if I may ask, what was your course in college po?
I graduated with a BS Math degree.
PS Math. Pastor, ang lagi kong naririnig sa IT, kasi before, I was also in an IT firm, yung iba minsan, hindi IT course talaga. And then they normally shift to IT business. What made you decide to shift into IT business?
Actually,
Industry.
yeah, actually it really intrigued me from the start, because that was the time when IT was just beginning. It was still in its infancy, and I discovered that I like the idea of making computer programs to solve problems, to automate things. Those are the attractions for me. And so when I started, I discovered that this is what I want to do.
Mm-mm. Pastor, was it difficult because hindi ka major in IT?
No, not at all. Because ang field, there are actually several areas of concentration. If you go into IT, you can go hardware, and that might require maybe an engineering degree, or you go into software, you go into security, and so many others still. Up to this point, ang dami ng iba I'm not even familiar with anymore. But for me, I followed the track ng programming. So what you need there is logic, uh, the ability to understand systems and processes, and of course a lot of math. Many people don't think that math is important in programming, but it's very, very important because sometimes you are asked to make an accounting system. So what do? Or you are required to ask to produce an inventory system or a production system where you have to compute efficiency and quota and incentives, things like that. So math, I found out, was very, very important in that field.
Actually, Pastor Gerry, this is also the first time that I've heard of it. Malaking bagay pala talaga yung math. So, Pastor, 2 years in teaching, 20 years in IT. When did you decide that you actually want to set up your own company?
The school is actually a product of, I think, three desires. No? Parang convergence ng three desires actually. The first one was that I was already active in the church at that time, but not as a pastor. But when you always read the Bible, study these things, inevitably you will be led to think about your own legacy in this world. Do I leave this world better than when I found it? Yung mga ganyan. So that started that train of thought for me. Na eventually nag-lead sa school. Ang pangalawang, I think, na desire is we wanted to have our own home. And parang di related, ano? We wanted to have our own home because at that time we have been renting for 15 years as a married couple at wala pa kaming bahay and we cannot afford homes in Quezon City or anywhere in NCR until we discovered Montalban, which is where we are now and which is where we put up also the school. And thirdly, uh, the desire to help someone, a particular someone in our church. Dahil she was described by her sister as somebody who has no direction in life. And she was trying to convince my wife, who is the academician between the two of us, uh, to take as her mentee this sister so that her life would have some, some direction. She could hold on to a job by training her as a teacher. And ergo, she convinced us to build the school.
Oh.
So converge itong tatlo na to.
Mm-mm.
And yun, eventually nagiging school siya.
Mm-mm. Pastor, when was that? Kailan kayo nag-start ng school?
2006.
Wow. So that's around almost 16 years from now, ago.
Yeah.
Mm-mm. Pastor, do you have preparations, personal preparations before the two of you started the school business?
Yes, of course. I think the biggest hurdle for me was the mental preparation. I was the first one who first decided this,
Mm-mm.
and my wife wasn't ready. She just wasn't ready. She was content with teaching. At that time, she was teaching in Ateneo, and I think concurrently with UANP. So she was happy doing that. But I was the one who had that desire because I thought that if I have to leave some legacy, then this is an opportunity for us to do that. And eventually, I was able to convince her with the help of some friends who already started their own school several years before.
Oh,
And of course,
wow.
the mental side from the mental preparation, we have to prepare also for where we are going to put up the school, for the place, the equipment, and the physical aspects of it.
Mm-mm. Kasi ang tinatanong nila, siguro yung iba, pastor, yung gusto nilang malaman. Kasi you mentioned saan ilalagay yung school, yung ibang mga preparations. Because 16 years is 16 years.
Yeah.
Ano po ba yung mga considerations nyo sa pagpili ng location for the school?
That's where the second desire came in. We wanted to have our own home. And Montalban was a good place, an affordable place for us to buy a home. And so we thought, because when you first come to Montalban, the first thing that will be impressed in your mind is ang layo, parang ganon, no? Especially at the time, ang usual way is coming from Batasan to San Mateo. Ang layo, ang tagal ng biyahe. And we thought, if we have to buy a house here, we might as well put up a school here para hindi na matagal yung mahirap ang biyahe because up to that point, we were living in Quezon City. So sanay kami na, Quezon City and then suddenly malayo ka. And so yun ang nag-dictate major factor why we chose Montalban.
Wow. Fast forward na tayo, Pastor. You were able to open the school and then did your wife continue her teaching in Ateneo and UANP or tumigil na po siya at nag
For a
full
while.
time?
She continued for a while because the school cannot really sustain our need financially kung titigil siya. Well, of course, Ateneo is it's contributing a big chunk of our budget. Although I was earning quite well din sa IT, pero siyempre mahirap yung biglang mabawasan ng malaking portion yung aming monthly income.
Mm-mm.
So she continued for a while. I think mga mga 7 or 8 years pa.
Wow. So kalahati po ng
Part-time na lang, part-time.
part-time. Pero kayo, Pastor, 100% stuff from your IT
Hindi din.
employment.
In fact,
That's
I
okay.
was, hindi, mas nauna pala ako. Yeah, mas nauna ako. My last company had a problem because of the because it's an export company. So when the peso strengthened so much against the dollar, I think coming from something like 50s to 40s, so the company lost, and I didn't want to find another job. At the time, the school was already doing quite well and had been in operation, I think, for about 7 years.
Wow.
I decided to just join my wife in running the school.
Okay. Can we talk a little about that, doing employment and business at the same time? How did you manage your time and of course your efforts in ensuring that the school will really work well?
Well, credit to my wife for that because she's the one who's really hands-on. I was more like a figurehead, a figurehead, and doing everything that the wife cannot do, like painting the walls if necessary, plumbing if needed. When you're starting, you'll just have to rely on yourself for most of the things that you need. Dahil nga, siyempre, ang finances is not really enough. We have to do all of these things. Pero my wife is only partially involved with Ateneo already at the time, so she could put more time in running the school, the day-to-day need of the school. And I was more into the macro side only of things. She's the one into the details, the training of the teachers, the lesson plans, and all that. After all, she's the academician between the two of us. Ako naman ay parang nandun lang ako sa mga macro. Where do we want to go? In what direction do we want to go? And I help her in areas where I have the better understanding, like mathematics, for example. We have to make a decision. Do we follow the American way of teaching math or another way? And so we decided early on to adopt the Singaporean method.
Mm.
And that's coming from me kasi I'm the one who's in mathematics and also in the sciences.
Mm. Pastor, you mentioned the background of your wife. Nagturo siya sa Ateneo, UANP, and we know that these are really exclusive schools. Ang question ko po, Pastor, is paano nyo dinesisyonan ang positioning or branding ng school nyo?
Before we started, we had to already to define what kind of school do we want to put up, who will be our clientele, and how do we market Eastbridge, considering that in Montalban, although it's a small town, but there are so many private schools and mostly small schools. Kaya madami. Kaya ang dami naming competitions. In fact, even in our street, yung stretch lang na siguro mga 500 meters na stretch lang na yan, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 schools. So ganun siya kadami. I asked my wife, what do you want to do with the school that we want to put up? At ang sabi niya, ang vision niya is she wants a school na maraming extracurricular activities. Because when she was teaching at Montessori, OLGM, she was the head of or the coordinator for extracurricular activities. And she produced a lot of those things, programs, pageants, and everything related to extracurricular activities. And she wanted to bring that into the school. And I told her that if we want to do that, then we have to position the school in such a way that our target clientele should be people who are willing to spend money. And so we decided on the tuition fee na dapat mataas ang tuition fee. And at the same time, dapat masuportahan namin yan ng good teachers. So mataas na sweldo ng teachers. And ang dating ng Eastbridge ay nagiging parang mahal na school. not to our intention dapat na ganun no? Pero we cannot avoid having that reputation dahil nga we cannot start in the same level sa katulad ng mga existing na schools na medyo mababa lang ang tuition fee at nagki-cater sila sa masa and at the same time kahit yung upper class pwede sila pero pwede silang sa masa din. Kami hindi talagang nag-start kami na kung hindi ka at least middle class, hindi mo afford ang Eastbridge because we want to pursue nga yung mga ganung programs and mahirapan ang walang resources.
Wow. Pastor, so importante, maganda yung sinabi niyo, defined na from the very start yung merkado na gusto niyo. The market and yung branding, yung positioning ng eskwelahan. Nakatulong ba yun, Pastor, sa success na meron kayo ngayon?
Yes. Ang advantage pala, we pleasantly discovered later on, ang advantage pala pag nag-target ka ng ganung market, mostly ang makukuha mo din ng mga clientele are professional parents. And therefore, their children are also medyo ang mga aptitudes ng mga bata, mataas din siya. At dahil doon, siyempre, if you teach them well, they will also come out to be better students, especially sa mga competitions. And we have been very active in our competitions sa aming sa buong Rizal hanggang sa Region 4. And this helped dahil nga kung ang mga kabataan na nakukuha mo ay from the start, to begin with, ay magagaling na, grabe ang advantage mo over other schools. So nakakatulong din talaga yung pinili namin na market kundi sa pati pag-establish ng Eastbridge as a school that produce highly competent students na nakakapasok sa mga big schools like Ateneo, LaSalle, Miriam, at hindi lang nakakapasok pati mga science schools. Hindi lang nakakapasok. Pag nakapasok na sila, nagpe-perform pa rin sila very well kasi nag-o-honor students pa rin sila.
Pastor, meron kayong sariling merkado, yung sinasabi nyo nga, sa Rizal, sa Montalban, is medyo high-end yung napili nyo. Kasi ito yung mga capable. Paano nyo po nakukumbinse yung mga parents? Kasi these are professionals mostly or even entrepreneurs na piliin sa Eastbridge over sa ibang schools sa Quezon City na mga isang oras lang po siguro ang biyahe.
Yes. Well, that's the thing kasi pag mga maliliit pa ng mga bata, siyempre ang parents, they don't want to bring their children to such far away schools as even Marikina, medyo restrictive na yung distance. Lalo pa yung Quezon City. So nakatulong din sa amin yung aming credentials, academic credentials because my wife is a graduate of UP and then ang major niya is English. So, siyempre alam mo naman sa atin sa traditional Filipino mentality kasi pag magaling sa English ang school, magaling ang English ang anak, parang ang tali-talino ka agad. So ganoon. So, ang impact mo diyan ay malaki when you are able to teach these children na maging magaling na communicator. Ako naman, dahil nga math major naman ako, so nakakatulong din siya. And sa UP din ako gumraduate. So with our tandem, medyo pag nilagay namin ang aming credential, medyo okay sa mga parent. And dito sa Montalban, siguro maganda din because when we came here and started Eastbridge, we don't have much competition pa masyado coming from bigger schools except yung Roosevelt lang at the time ang meron dito. The rest, mga maliliit lang na schools. So we have quite an edge as far as our credentials are concerned. And then we started the year by giving a free summer classes for prospective namin students. At yun na, word of mouth.
Yung word of mouth. May challenges din po ba ang pag-run ng school?
Ay, pardon?
May challenges din po ba?
Challenging. Yeah, yeah. Um, and these past 2 years, yun talaga parang doon namin naranasan yung mga malalaking challenge. Of course, ang sa simula, before the pandemic struck, ang mga biggest challenge namin doon is that unlike other businesses where sometimes you have very minimal interactions with your customers, ang school kasi dalawang dalawang type ng customers, no? In fact, minsan talagang tatlo pa eh. Because you have to deal with the students, and then you have to deal also with the parents, and sometimes even with the grandparents. Yung mga family, no? Parang ganyan. So, medyo challenging siya in that way because we discovered that in some schools, even in big schools, sometimes they have problems dealing with parents. So, that's a challenge for us. Kung paano namin gagawin to na pagkakatiwalaan kami ng mga parents instead of aawayin kami. You know, sometimes that's the problem with parents when you are a school owner. So you have to balance sometimes. Sinong poprotektahan mo? You protect your teachers kung ang situation is there's a conflict between your clientele and your client and then your staff. So sa amin, tinry namin na ma-position yung aming even the way we manage conflicts and we deal with parents and other issues na pwedeng mag-arise. Pinosisyon na namin yan na magiging fair lang kami. So kung sinong may kasalanan, okay, yun ang tama lang ang pag-deal. Hindi kami kakampi dito, hindi kami kakampi sa kung saan. So that's challenging because ang parents normally tingin nila sa sarili nila because they are the customer, so to speak. So dapat customer first, no? Parang ganon. Customer is always right. Pero sa awa naman ng Panginoon, hindi na ayos namin yun. Nalampasan namin yung ganung part ng challenge ng pag-aaral ng school. At ang pangalawa, siyempre, yung minsan yung brain drain na nangyayari because private schools has this common problem na nawawala yung mga teachers after a while. Lilipat sila sa public schools because they get better pay, things like that. So that's the second challenge. And third challenge is ito, naramdaman naman namin ngayon na yung mag-pandemic where suddenly everything can change and you have to adjust very, very quickly. Otherwise, maano ka talaga, maapektuhan ka so much so that maring just like other schools here in our town, nagsara talaga sila.
Wow. Grabe. At naintindihan ko yung sinasabi nyo na minsan yung sinasabi, the customer's always right and that's really hard, so hard to manage. Pastor, may mga challenges pero ano naman yung mga winning moments na pwede mong sabihin ng pagkakaroon ng isang eskwelahan? Gaano ba ito ka-fulfilling? Dahil kasama po siya sa isa sa desire, di ba yung sa desires nyo kanina? Napakaganda
Yes.
po ng sinabi niya. So, ano po ang pinaka mga fulfilling moments sa isang school business?
Mostly makikita mo talaga yan doon sa mga kabataan na in the first place, you went into education because you want to have an influence dito sa mga bata. No? To inculcate in them, coming from a Christian perspective, dahil nga pastor ako, so inculcate in them moral values, which is, sad to say, lacking minsan dito ng sobra-sobra sa ating bansa. So moral values through holistic na education. And then makikita mo din yung pag-angat ng ng aspirations nila to strive for the best na pwedeng makakaya ng mga bata. And then seeing them really achieving those things sa buhay nila, yung mga makikitaan mo sila ng mga pagbabago, makikitaan mo sila na tumaas ang mga pangarap ng mga kahit mga magulang. No? Sa amin, hindi lang ang mga kabataan ang tinatarget namin, pati mga magulang kung ma-influence namin sila. We try to do that. And we have seen this happen. Parents aspiring the best for their children, they are not intimidated anymore to apply for, because this period na kailangan mong i-apply for exams, papatake na exams sa mga anak mo sa mga malalaking schools, magagandang schools, kahit mahihirap na schools. Inuubos nila eh. Lahat ng science schools ina-applyan, lahat ng malaking schools ina-applyan. Dahil nga, we believe that this is part of our influence sa kanila. Aspire for the best. Huwag kayong makontento lang na ano. So, after elementary, lumilipat sila sa QC instead of maghanap na lang ng malapit. Hindi na sila nakukontento na gano'n. Hindi na malapit ang hinahanap. They're looking for the next best school na pwedeng pasukan ng mga anak nila. So those are wins for us. And siyempre, although nandun yung idea ng profit, dahil nga private school, kailangan mag-operate on its own earning, wala namang subsidy any coming from anywhere. We have to consider that also. Pero more ang aming win ay na-define namin dun sa mga achievement ng mga anak namin, achievement ng mga estudyante namin. And we have seen that and have been happy about it. Kasi sa mga competitions ay nananalo sila hanggang regional level nananalo sila. Wala na kasing national kaya hindi na namin masabi kung mananalo kami sa national. But when they win in these competitions, alam namin na we are doing fine sa kanila. And at the same time, ang effect niyan sa kanila is they also aspire even to be better.
It's 12.
Very, very fulfilling.
Pastor Gerry, you mentioned na yung iba lumilipat na pag high school. Currently ba anong offerings ni Eastbridge elementary to high school, senior high, or elementary?
Ano lang, hanggang grade 6 lang kami.
Hanggang grade 6 lang currently. Tapos kanina, Pastor, sa desires mo, no, ang sabi mo, siyempre gusto mong yung naabutan mo ay mahigitan mo. Kasi that's part of according sa Bible. Kung kayo pong tatanungin ko, ano ang gusto niyo maging legacy kapag dumating na yung panahon na kailangan niyo mag-retire sa pagmamanage ng school? Ano pong gusto niyo iiwan sa Eastbridge?
Nagde-develop din kasi kami ng mga namin, ng mga tao na iwanan namin. And in fact, these are people na dumaan na sa maraming screening process. In terms of na-test mo na ba ang mga karakter ng mga tao na to? Have you even mentored them so that they adopt also yung mga pag-iisip at mga pamamaraan at yung mga aspirations na meron kami? And so far, we can see the beginning of these things sa kanila. Because if ever na medyo mag-hands off na kami ng konti sa Eastbridge, gusto namin makikita na magpapatuloy ang Eastbridge sa kung ano na yung nasimulan niya at mapahigitan niya pa kung ano na yung na-achieve niya. So in fact, gusto namin na before pa lang kami siguro mag-retire talaga, ay gusto namin na ma-increase pa yung course offering namin up to high school, senior high school kung makakayanan. Dahil nga nakita namin na medyo kulang actually ang influence pa namin sa mga bata kung hanggang grade 6 lang kami. When they move to high school, minsan nahahatak pa rin sila sa mga maling influences. And we think that in order to further strengthen these kids, na paglabas nila sa school ay medyo matibay na yung mga loob nila na hindi masyadong magpapadala sa mga influences na hindi maganda sa buhay nila. Then we have to extend our influence on them. Hanggang kung matapos namin hanggang high school, yun ang pinaka-best namin gusto ko gawin.
I have last 2 questions, Pastor, kasi alam ko, mabilis ang oras. No? Napakaganda na pinag-uusapan natin. Pastor, based on what you've said and what you've seen in Eastbridge, what do you think po is the most important thing, or which one is more important? IQ or EQ? Lalo na po sa panahon ngayon.
Pareho na siya. In fact, marami ng Q ngayon eh. Marami ng Q ang lumabas pa because people tend to discover that if you only have 1 or 2 of these things, parang hindi pa rin ayos ang mga buhay, no? So IQ, EQ, meron pa tayong CQ, 'di ba? Cultural awareness pa. At marami na siyang mga no. So you cannot really pick and choose between the two or two out of kung ilan yan na meron ngayon. And that's why we tend to target all of this doon sa aming school when we defined the school to be a multiple intelligence school. So ginawa namin siyang ganyan para kung ano man ang mga strength ng mga bata ay kailangan naming ma-discover in the course ng pagtuturo at pag-attend nila ng mga classes and activities sa school, so that we can help them also identify where they are strong, where they can probably pursue other things. So pag sinabi natin na IQ, kasi normally nalilimit na lang sa math, English, and science. Pero kung makikita ano pa sila ng intelligence, for example, in their bodily kinesthetics, magaling pala sila na sports person, nakakapag-uplift din yan ng kanilang self-esteem at the same time. At medyo hindi sila dadalawang isip minsan na tupurso yung mga hindi yung mga standard kumbaga na pinupurso ng mga tao to be successful someday. So we try to develop all of this kung pwede pa lang.
Maganda yung sinabi niyo, Pastor, no, na tinatry niyong i-discover at develop kung ano yung talento na meron yung mga students. Pastor, what is your advice to people who want to venture into a business like yours, yung sa school, or probably those who are currently employed and thinking of going into business later on?
First of all, siguro talaga dapat meron kang tamang desire on what you really want to accomplish, no, in your life, whether it's a school or something else. And dapat yung passionate ka doon sa desire mo na yun. And clear ka kung ano yung gusto mong ma-achieve doon, kung bakit ka may ganyang desire. For us, it was very clear because we want to leave a legacy na nag-involve ng tao, nag-involve ng mga kabataan, next generation kumbaga, legacy upon the next generation na pwedeng mag-set naman ng trajectory para naman sa bigger pa na kumbaga bigger environment natin, which is the country. So doon talaga rin naman magsisimula. So if you want to go into a business like this, kung particular talaga sa education, napaka-importante yung dapat academician ka din at the same time. Some other people might open a school from the point of view of business. Dahil nakita nila na, maganda pala yung school, kikita ka pala sa school. Yeah, you can, pero kung yun lang po ang motivation natin, medyo pwede kang ma-distract kasi from the main course dapat talaga na sinusundan ng eskwelahan, which is to educate. Pwede kang gagawa ng mga compromises na dapat hindi naman kailangan kung medyo minimal yung or kung pwede palang wala yung element talaga ng this is business. Kung baga, nagiging titingnan mo lang siya na business siya because it has to survive somehow. It has to make money in order to survive. But more than that aspect, dapat makikita natin na I want this dahil may ina-accomplish ako dito na mas importante kaysa sa business side niya. So kung school yan, academician ka dapat. Marunong ka talaga sa academics. Alam mo yung kung paano mo siya i-run so that you can achieve yung major niya na objective talaga for its existence.
Thank you so much, Pastor Gerry. Maraming salamat for sharing your journey from being an employee to running a school right now. Pastors, any other advice to everyone, lalo na po ngayong pandemic, before we say thank you to everyone?
Well, I would like to thank also your company for allowing me to share my experiences. Jaisal, thank you for this invitation. And to the viewers, yun nga po, we have been through something which we didn't anticipate. So coming from the business side, talagang medyo very, very challenging. Pero after we have been challenged so much by this pandemic, parang nagiging matatag na yung kalooban natin siguro dapat bawat isa sa atin na, well, whatever may come, alam natin na makakayanan naman natin na mag-survive talaga if we have properly defined kung ano nga ba talaga ang ating gusto ma-accomplish dito sa mundo na to, sa ating buhay.
Thank you so much, Pastor Gerry. Of course, the pleasure is ours. Maraming salamat for sharing their answers. Alam niyo po mga kababayan, please grab a copy or please read our July-August issue. Shinare po doon ni Pastor Gerry kung paano nila nalagpasan at nilalagpasan ang pandemic. Napakaganda po ng kanyang mga sagot. So please read it at Press Reader, and you can subscribe to our website starting August 8th to read the current issue, even the past issues of the Corporate magazine. So this is Chaisel again for On Point with the Corporate, and we will see you again for another episode next time.